Donnie's social network, Truth Social, became a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ this week. And as a result of him owning the majority of the shares, his wealth surged by over $5 billion in a single day on paper. Now, before I get started, this is not financial advice. This is not about Donnie. I'm just talking about the financial fundamentals of this business and what I'm seeing. It's important to divorce this opinion and this video from Donnie himself. I just want to talk about the basic fundamentals and what I see. Now, just to preface this, I've been a web developer for 15 years. I understand a lot about building websites. Not that I know everything, that's just something that I understand. Truth Social, the social network, is built on a white labeled platform. White labeling means essentially that you build on top of somebody else's technology stack. So to give it a similar example for the real world, imagine an architect draws the plans for a house and then gives you the external shell of the house. And then what you do is design the insides. You pick the fixtures, you pick the paint color, you pick the tile, you pick the handles on the doorknobs, the cabinets, etc. But you're building it inside their structure. White labeling a social media platform means that somebody else builds the platform, somebody else builds the technology, then you style it and formulate it in a way that fits your specific application. Like if I wanted to start a social network of people that love knitting, for example, I could use a white labeled social media platform and build that network. This essentially allows you to build something that is technologically very powerful and advanced and has already been tested and modified to fit the application, but then you apply it to whatever specific need that you have without having to reinvent the wheel, without having to reinvent the idea of you have a user account, the user account has a wall, people can message each other, they can like, follow, make comments, etc. It's the basic bones, and Truth Social is built in this manner. Every other major social media platform, X, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube, etc., all of those were built using proprietary technology, which means they coded and built the whole technology from the beginning, from the start, from the root. The companies are the technology. Whereas in the case of Truth Social and many other things, this is not uncommon. They're using an existing structure and then branding it and modifying it in a way that fits for their application. Now, with that being said, this company starts getting traded publicly on the stock market, and Donnie owns a vast majority of the shares, which have a 6-month lockup period, which means that he can't sell any of his position for 6 months. So on paper, as this company raises in value, as more people buy their shares, it increases his on-paper valuation. He may not be able to sell it for that amount in 6 months, if he even chooses to sell in 6 months, but on paper, it shows that he's worth a lot of money, much like the company is right now. And since the stock market is based on expectation, what's happening is just like any normal IPO where people are betting on the value of future revenue. And in today's modern IPO marketplace, a company that does not make a lot of revenue that will likely be very profitable in the future is a common IPO tactic. Typically, an IPO in the past would be a company that's gotten through all the pitfalls, is now making a bunch of money, and then is going to use that money to grow the business. Whereas in recent years, an IPO has actually been a fundraising mechanism to take a business that might be losing a ton of money, inject a bunch of cash in it, and then use that cash to essentially propel it to short-term profitability. But in the case of Truth Social, people are likely purchasing this stock right now as a somewhat like a meme coin or a gamble or an investment, or perhaps as some way of supporting Donnie in some other way. Aside from the people that are just buying it to short-term watch it pop and then dump it. But this is not uncommon for IPOs, but I just wanted to give an idea of what this means. In just simple terms, let's think about the valuation of Truth Social should Donnie not contribute to it. Like any social media business, their primary revenue source is advertising, which means that the advertising is predicated based on a figure called monthly active users. How many people are using the app monthly, and then you could monetize those active monthly users. These are the IPO dates and the monthly active users for 4 popular social media platforms. Notice Donnie's. Now, before I get into the numbers, let's just look at it from the 50,000 foot view, just what an average person can observe. Should Donnie not become the president in 4 years? Are people going to pay attention to Truth Social as much now that he's not the president, now that he's no longer running for president? He's going to be close to his 80 years old. Are people going to be going to Truth Social for daily updates just to see what Donnie posts? And in the event that he doesn't post there or doesn't post as much, which would be highly likely, Would people use the platform really at all? Or would the monthly active users rapidly diminish should he not choose to post there? We don't know, but I would guess that if he wasn't posting there as much, the platform would get used a whole lot less. Because you can't really have a platform predicated on the usage of a single person or entity. But, only time will tell. Let's say that he does become the president. Will he use this as his primary communication mechanism? Yes, perhaps. And if he does, yeah, it could rip for 4 years as people would be forced to go there to see what he had to say. But would he not actively want to communicate to the most people by using things like X or Facebook or Instagram or the official POTUS accounts on any of these respective platforms? Because even though you're the president, you still need to court public opinion. You still need to appeal to people and show them what you're doing so that you can have their support. So they encourage members of Congress, senators, House members, and the public to follow along and support what you're doing. So just for the sake of argument, let's say he does win the presidency, he does use True Social, and it does become this active thing that rips with active users all the time. Do you think that more people would be using it in that case than are right now when he's using it to the maximum amount to curry favor? Maybe. Because the reality is there's just not a lot of people active there. And then in the event that is the case, well, what happens in 4 years when he's 80-something, he's 82 years old, he's no longer the president, he's retired, is he not tweeting as much? Does the platform then die? Or does there have to be some other person or series of persons that believe that this is the best way to communicate with the most people, that they couldn't otherwise use X or another platform to achieve that end? Which means that the long-term investment value of this business is, if it's predicated on Donnie, which it certainly is right now, at least from my opinion, means that at the absolute maximum, this thing would lose the vast majority of its value in 4 years unless it became value based around some other thing that wasn't him. And that assumes that he wins and uses it as his primary communication. It doesn't take into consideration if he was to lose or if he won and didn't use it in that way. Either way, the future is uncertain, and one could argue that right now might be the most active time that it could ever have, as it seems to be losing more users than it's keeping. But aside from that, let's just consider maybe the money side of it, aside from what could happen in the future. Let's just talk about what's happening right now. The stock was up 50% on the first day, and today, as of making this video and the market is still open, it's up another 15%. This article was from yesterday, so the company is worth over $10 billion right now. But since a lot of people see what I see and a lot of others see, this has now become the costliest US stock to bet against. Meaning that you can place a bet against the stock's success. You can bet that the position will go down. The more people that are willing to bet that the stock will go down, the more expensive it becomes to bet against it. And this has become the most expensive stock to bet against, which means that the most people are willing to bet money that it will be going down, and going down precipitously at that. Because through the first 9 months of last year, this company generated only $3.4 million of revenue and lost $49 million. And if the market is valuing this business at well over $10 billion, think about purchasing a company that maybe has a 4-year shelf life, that isn't based on any proprietary technology, that is just a white labeled, branded, and marketed version of somebody else's tech that's likely been added onto. I'm not trying to discredit them for what they've done. And over $10 billion valuation, you're valuing each user at over $1,000 a person. Whereas other popular social networks, it's more like $20, $30 a person. Now, like this article points out here below, Reddit, another massive social media platform that's been around for many, many years, that's built on proprietary technology, that built itself up over the ranks over many years, was valued at only $6.4 billion last week. It generates 160 times more revenue. 160 times more revenue. And as anybody that understands business valuations knows, a larger amount of revenue, a larger amount of income means that the company could command a higher multiple in value. So for example, if a company generates $10 million a year in revenue, and let's say you are willing to buy it at 10x that revenue, so 10 times 10, 100, you're willing to bet that it's worth $100 million. If you generated $800 million, you maybe would value it at 20 times that revenue or 50 times that revenue. The point is that it's easier to justify multiplying a higher number of revenue, a higher income stream. It's like if your business makes $1 million a year versus your business makes $15 million a year. The company that makes the $15 million a year is probably worth a higher multiple because it's generating a higher amount. The ramp that it had to follow to get to $15 million a year is a lot harder than getting to one. So you don't buy both of them at 10x their revenue. You buy one at 10x and one at 30x. This is just how any normal business is valued, generally speaking. So all this being said, I like Donnie. I think he should run the country. I think he should win the nomination. I think he should win the presidency. I almost certainly will vote for him again. I think that he loves the country, generally speaking, and I'm trying to separate this opinion of this business from the person himself. I think that it's fair and reasonable to say from a technology standpoint and an income standpoint that this company, this stock is wildly, grossly overvalued, has a very very short timeline where I don't believe that it will likely ever reach profitability. The whole platform is predicated on a technology stack that was not developed specifically for them, at least initially. And I don't see what other appeal that it has that any other social media network doesn't satisfy. It has a low amount of monthly active users, of which I don't know how it will be able to gain more. It likely has a maximum of a 4 to 5 year timeline, if that. The revenue per user is grossly overvalued, and I would wager that Donnie himself and his associated companies are buying a majority of the ads right now, of which that would likely decrease if he was to be the president or not be the president. And I think it's safe to say that this social network will likely not exist in a number of years, and all of the people that purchase this stock will likely be left holding the bag. This is not financial advice. It's just my opinion. I love business. I love the stock market. I'm interested in money and financial markets and the economy. And I think a lot of people are buying this stock for the wrong reason. Just my opinion.